This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good evening. United States Congressman Mickey Leland of Texas and his party are still missing in Ethiopia. Privately, U.S. officials say after 5 days, hope is fading. Publicly, fear and frustration among Leland's family and colleagues are growing. Some of them are openly critical of the pace, scope, and quality of the search. The latest air and ground searches in rough terrain and bad weather failed to find any sign of the Leland party or their plane. Our coverage begins with Peter Schweitzer, our man in Ethiopia.
A powerful United States rescue force, from giant C-5 transports to mid-air refuelable Black Hawk helicopters, is being assembled here in Ethiopia, but it may be too late. Congressman Mickey Leland and the 15 others on his plane have been missing since Monday. Every hour that passes reduces the chances for their survival. When the search resumed this morning, pilots were optimistic that the plane had been located. A U.S. weather satellite had identified 2 distress signals believed to come from the downed plane. But a thorough search of the area north of Addis Ababa and another area to the south found nothing. The aircraft were redirected by rescue officials to follow the original route Leland and his party would have taken. They scoured a 500-mile-long corridor without success.
After 10 hours in the air, the C-130s returned to the airport. A day that started in hope ended in disappointment.
The military believed that the sophisticated electronics on the C-130s would easily pick up the automatic distress signal from the missing plane. That didn't happen, and now the transmitter batteries may have died.
Now we don't have the advantage of having somebody beeping up at us. We got to go in there and do a very thorough visual search.
The embassy officials said the U.S. has decided to bring in more planes, more crews, and more support facilities. 300 U.S. military personnel are expected on the ground here by tomorrow.
I think that this operation has proved to be a hell of a tougher nut to crack than anybody expected.
2 close colleagues of Mickey Leland, Congressman Gary Ackerman and Alan Wheat, arrived in Addis Ababa today. They said the U.S. is still not doing enough and tried to believe that their friend is still alive.
It's just a gut feeling that we have that under any set of circumstances, Mickey's personality would be one that says push on.
The rescue effort will push on again tomorrow. But the weather forecast calls for clouds, thunderstorms, and limited visibility. And that weather is expected to hold over the next few days. Peter Schweitzer, CBS News, Addis Ababa.
After search planes returned from another fruitless day, President Bush tried to sound hopeful that Congressman Mickey Leland and his 15 fellow passengers will be found alive.
I can understand the concern that people that love Mickey Leland feel and that I feel, but there's a lot going on, and so let's just hope and pray he's okay.
Privately, officials say it is unlikely the plane's passengers could have survived this long. Among members of Leland's staff, dissatisfaction with the search effort is beginning to show.
But it just seems to me that with all of the sophisticated surveillance that we have, with all of the sophisticated equipment we have, we could have and should have located them by now.
The White House called it the largest search operation in memory, and the Pentagon produced the hourly cost for some of the aircraft involved. $5,400 for the giant C-5 transport, $686 for each of the Black Hawk helicopters. The U-2 spy plane took pictures of a 40,000 square mile area, but nearly half of it was covered by clouds. The U.S. weather satellite has made 2 more passes over Ethiopia without detecting any emergency signals. Even if Leland's plane had somehow landed safely in the rugged terrain, the passengers would be running out of provisions by now.
The provisions that were on the Leland aircraft were a boxed lunch for each member of the party, 1 or 2 cases of soft drinks, and 3 to 5 gallons of water. The aircraft also carried the standard emergency medical kit.
The search for Leland's plane has begun to resemble the 1972 search for the plane carrying House Majority Leader Hale Boggs and 1 other congressman. That plane went down in Alaska and never was found. That search went on for 5 weeks before it was called off. A White House official says there's no thought yet of calling off the search for Mickey Leland. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
Upbeat economic reports today helped ease fears of both inflation and recession. The government reported that wholesale prices fell in July, the 2nd straight monthly decline, and retail sales shot up, sign of a growing economy. Correspondent Richard Roth reports the news sent the dollar soaring.
It wasn't just surprising news, it was surprisingly good news, like an early morning shot of adrenaline in the market where currencies are traded, a healthy sign for the U.S. economy.
Right now, I'd say the feeling about the dollar is one of euphoria. The dollar has made a tremendous up move.
For a while, the stock market surged too, flirting with a record high in a forget-your-troubles rally, fueled by the drop in wholesale prices and the rise in retail sales. Twin signs that the economy's in balance between inflation and recession. By the close, though, the Dow Jones average had rolled back more than 28 points on volume of almost 200 million shares. These were the numbers that caused the excitement, a jump in retail sales of almost a point, an indicator the economy hasn't completely stopped growing, and a drop in the producer price index of 0.4%, the biggest monthly drop in 3 years.
The decline in the producer price index today means that inflation has peaked and that interest rates are probably headed lower. That's good news for the consumer and also the stock market.
But in the price and sales figures, there was also a lesson on how much the U.S. economy is driven by the auto industry. Cuts in costs for gasoline and new cars were the big factors in the drop in wholesale prices. But the reason car prices were cut was sluggish sales. Manufacturers' rebates have helped turn that around, and that's a big reason retail sales were up. Car sales have improved. Take away autos, and the picture isn't quite so good.
Consumers are spending, but they're spending cautiously. The trend on retail sales is a very sluggish trend.
And sluggish is the word several analysts were using today, explaining why they're not convinced the economy is out of danger. As long as economic growth stays slow in consumer spending, housing, and industrial output, recession is a risk that won't disappear. Dan?
Richard, thanks. Still to come on tonight's CBS Evening News. Susan Spencer on new danger from an old disease that vaccine had beaten. And Bob Faw on new doubts about using dolphins as swimming pool playmates.
Beautiful, shiny, healthy hair doesn't end in the salon. It continues every day with Vidal Sassoon shampoos and conditioning rinses. Vidal Sassoon shampoos cleanse to give you shine you can see. And Vidal Sassoon conditioners add manageability you will notice. Vidal Sassoon, if you don't look good, we don't look good.
Unfortunately, septic systems back up.
What a mess!
What an expense!
But Rid-X once a month adds millions of bacteria to digest waste and works to keep your septic system running trouble-free. Rid-X, it helps prevent septic system backup.
They said this concrete would last for years. Now it has expensive water damage. Why?
Even concrete needs the protection of Thompson's Water Seal. It penetrates to protect wood, brick, and concrete from water damage. Thompson's the first name and lasting protection.
It was Dean Witter's personal philosophy of success.
We have a sacred trust to protect our customers.
But its impact was felt on California Street.
To maintain conservative policies.
On Lincoln Street and Acorn Street.
To put the interest of our clients first.
Dean Witter put principles before profit, people before portfolios. There are many ways to measure success on Wall Street.
We measure success one investor at a time.
Dean Witter, a member of the Sears Financial Network.
Public health officials haven't seen anything like it in years. A nationwide outbreak of measles, a highly contagious yet highly preventable disease. Vaccines have been available for more than a quarter of a century, but as CBS News medical correspondent Susan Spencer reports, a lot of American young people are not getting their shots.
Due to the outbreak of measles, we urge parents of children from 6 months to 5 years of age to immunize their children.
In Chicago today, the message blared forth loud and clear: get vaccinated against measles. Cause for alarm: nationwide, the number of cases of measles is up 370% over last year.
This is the largest measles outbreak in almost a decade. There are almost 9,000 cases reported through August.
The hardest hit areas: Texas, California, and now Illinois, where health officials are working feverishly to contain measles, a disease they thought they'd licked with vaccine. But especially among the poor, too few kids get vaccinations. So far, around the country, 29 people have died. So in Chicago's inner city, bilingual health workers have been scouring neighborhoods, handing out flyers, offering free shots. There are long, long lines.
What we had in Chicago was a growing group of susceptible preschoolers. And when the virus got into that group of kids, it spread very quickly.
It's highly communicable. Someone who's in a waiting room an hour after a patient has left can even pick up measles.
The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends 2 vaccinations, one at 15 months, one at junior high school. In outbreak areas, it also suggests booster shots for adults under 32.
This is not a rite of passage. This is basically a serious illness that can be prevented.
It's a disease that would cause encephalitis or brain fever in 1 in 2,000 and could kill.
This year's problem doesn't compare to the years before vaccine, when hundreds of thousands of people got the measles. But health officials say they're worried that this outbreak hasn't peaked yet. And even in the bad old days, summer was supposed to be a slow time for the measles. Susan Spencer, CBS News, Washington.
We reported last night how the AIDS epidemic in this country is threatening the very financial survival of hospitals. Thanks partly to Glasnost, the true extent of the AIDS crisis in the Soviet Union is finally coming out. Correspondent Bill McLaughlin in Moscow reports tonight how some antiquated Soviet hospitals are doing more harm than good in fighting this terrible disease.
These Russians are victims of AIDS, even the babies. Victims of what medical authorities here say is an epidemic.
Soviet authorities are just beginning to realize that they may be losing the war against AIDS. While in the West, people infected with AIDS go to hospitals to be treated, here, hospitals have infected hundreds, perhaps thousands of patients with the AIDS virus. The poorly equipped Soviet medical system has helped to spread AIDS throughout this country.
Soviet officials misjudged the whole thing. They brazenly lied. Knowing the real situation, they brazenly lied to our faces. And of course, this was a crime because we lost several years.
According to the critics, the state committed the crime by not providing hospitals with the tools to prevent AIDS. There's a near total absence of disposable syringes, proper sterilization, and AIDS testing equipment that works.
We don't have enough equipment. I can say that the whole country lacks the necessary amount of disposable medical equipment, so we can't guarantee that there won't be infections in hospitals.
The terrible part is that our medical personnel is forced to consciously infect people because they have no other choice.
At this AIDS clinic, researchers work with broken test tubes. Just a scratch can mean infection with the virus for the doctors and nurses. Young people in the Soviet Union, just beginning to taste some freedom, are also becoming a high-risk group. Soviet sex education is woefully inadequate. Soviets who know they should use condoms can't find any. They were impossible to find at this pharmacy, one of the biggest in Moscow.
We don't have condoms here. They're very hard to find.
The number of Soviet AIDS cases is increasing. For victims like Sergei, life is especially difficult.
Society spits on us. There's nothing to do but waste away here.
But this week, in an extraordinary appeal published in Pravda, the Soviet Health Ministry pleaded for people to donate Western currency to help the government buy equipment in the West to fight the spread of AIDS in the Soviet Union. Bill McLaughlin, CBS News, Moscow.
U.S. federal authorities in Texas today ordered the brother-in-law of former Mexican President Luis Echeverria Alvarez held as a material witness to the murder of a U.S. narcotics agent. Ruben Zunio Arce was arrested in San Antonio and ordered taken to California. He's wanted as a witness at the trial in Los Angeles of defendants charged with the 1985 kidnap torture killing of U.S. Drug Enforcement agent Enrique Camarena in Mexico. More tonight on the increasingly bizarre and possibly botched case of Felix Bloch. He's the U.S. diplomat who is suspected, the government says, of spying for the Soviets. Bloch still has not been charged with anything. For days, a tale of reporters and FBI agents has made Bloch look more like the center of attraction in a circus ring than a spy ring. Today, correspondent Rita Braver reports Bloch played cat and mouse with the latest questions about whether he is or isn't a spy.
Suspected spy Felix Bloch seems to enjoy taking the FBI and the press for a ride.
Any of you want to ride along with me?
I'd love to.
This afternoon, it was a little shopping excursion.
Davon gelaufen bin.
In a cagey interview in German with Austrian television, Bloch said he won't talk about his case until the right time. He acknowledged that he was in a Paris restaurant when and where he allegedly passed a briefcase to a Soviet KGB contact. But is Bloch missing a briefcase?
No.
And Bloch acknowledged that his strategy is to run his pursuers ragged. He has taken them on a 22-mile hike to the zoo, to the movies, and to the Big Wong Chinese restaurant. They have tracked him in search of his dry cleaning and in search of culture. And the astounding truth behind this astounding spectacle is that even though U.S. intelligence officials suspect Bloch of betraying American secrets to the Soviets, law enforcement officials acknowledge that they're at a stalemate.
You can run an intelligence investigation on a much lower standard of proof than a criminal case. And that appears to be the point in this investigation where the FBI is now. They have enough to keep an intelligence case going, but not enough to bring a criminal case.
So for now, Bloch and his entourage will keep on the move.
How long you want to chase him, guys?
Nobody knows for sure. Bloch just says, I don't want people to be bored in August.
That's on the house, everybody. That's on the house.
Rita Braver, CBS News, Washington.
President Bush backed away today from any new confrontation with congressional Democrats over the William Lucas nomination. The Senate Judiciary Committee recently rejected Lucas as Mr. Bush's nominee to be the nation's chief civil rights enforcer at the Justice Department. Lucas's opponents questioned his job experience and civil rights commitment. There had been some talk that President Bush might use a technicality to appoint Lucas anyway. Instead, today the president gave Lucas another Justice Department job, one that doesn't require Senate confirmation. And paid a heavy price today for defacing a portrait of Mao during China's pro-freedom, pro-democracy protests. One was sentenced to life in prison, the other to long terms. Their crime was throwing eggshells filled with paint at the huge Mao portrait overlooking Tiananmen Square. The three were turned in by protesters themselves, who said at the time they wouldn't tolerate vandalism. Furious Chinese leaders ordered the damaged portrait removed that same night and replaced with a brand new copy. In a never-ending drumbeat, the Chinese army is trying to force-feed the people its account of the whole crackdown. More about that from Bill Whitaker in Beijing.
The Chinese propaganda machine grinds on relentlessly. In the 2 months since the bloody siege of Tiananmen Square, the People's Liberation Army has attempted a revolutionary transformation. The relationship between the army and the people has improved since June 4th, says this soldier. It's all part of a massive PR campaign in Beijing to sweep away the memory of the day the People's Army turned on the people. During the Army's 62nd anniversary celebration, soldiers even put down their guns and put on their toe shoes to dance their way into the hearts of the people. But many say it will take more than song and dance to remove civilian blood from Army hands.
Before the June 4th, I think that soldier is our army. It's defending us. We like them.
And now he says,
the main feeling I got is a fear. I fear this of those soldiers.
This will be the one event in people's lives that they never forget, when the military came into their city unnecessarily. And I don't believe that any amount of propaganda can change that for people.
Still, in the last few days, a new exhibit has opened up in Beijing, complete with burned-out military vehicles, showing how the Army saved the city from counter-revolutionary thugs 2 months ago. Some Western officials say to truly win back the hearts and minds of the people of Beijing would require the government to admit what actually happened here on Tiananmen Square and to accept responsibility for civilian deaths. They also say that's not likely to happen soon. The soldiers love the people love the soldiers, is the government line. It rings hollow for those old enough to understand the significance of Tiananmen Square. But said often enough and long enough, the government is hoping the next generation will believe. Bill Whitaker, CBS News, Beijing.
The powerful spiritual leader of the pro-Iranian Hezbollah said today that he'd be willing to help free the Western hostages. Sheikh Mohammed Hussein Falalallah spoke at a mosque in Beirut. He conditioned his offer on the West pressuring Israel to free its Arab prisoners. Terrorist groups linked to Hezbollah are believed to be holding most of the hostages. Israel today doubled to a full year the time it can jail Palestinians without charge or trial. More than 2,000 Palestinians are being held under these conditions. The United States has charged the practice is used in many cases to detain Palestinians for political reasons.
Life without cholesterol. Give up the best things in life. What's left?
New Miracle Whip cholesterol-free dressing. Now you get all the taste of regular Miracle Whip and absolutely no cholesterol.
I do?
New Miracle Whip cholesterol-free. Now the best things in life are cholesterol-free.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And now see the light. Miracle Whip Light's cholesterol-free. It's a question of taste. If you had your pick of two cereals, both high-vitamin cereals, would you pick the one with just one kind of flake? Or Kellogg's Just Right with 3 different kinds of flakes, plus hearty rolled oats, plump raisins, sweet juicy dates, and crisp crunchy nuts? You're not alone. 2 out of 3 people pick Just Right over the leading high-vitamin cereal. In a world of high nutrition, Just Right is an answer to the question of taste. Kellogg's Just Right with fruit and nuts or crunchy fiber nuggets.
When my minor arthritis pain acts up, even little things are a big effort. But I don't take aspirin anymore. I take Advil. Advil gives me hours of relief from arthritis pain, and it's gentler to my stomach than aspirin. Advil, advanced medicine for pain.
With low back pain, every step shoots pain. Up here. Know what helps?
Clinically proven Back Guard, a shoe insert. Watch how it absorbs foot shock to relieve low back pain.
Amazing. Something down here can help up here.
Back Guard from Dr. Scholl's.
Dolphins are among the most intelligent and fascinating creatures in the world. There's growing concern now that they may be in danger, victims of their own popularity among humans. Correspondent Bob Faw has our report.
For some thrill seekers, this might be the ultimate trip, propulsion courtesy of one of nature's most remarkable creatures, the dolphin. You feel like King Neptune, said one rider, on God's own jet skis.
It was exciting, different. I've never experienced anything like this before. It's a memory that nobody will ever be able to take away from us.
It is called the Dolphin Experience, and since the workforce rotates and there is no heavy lifting, operators insist no dolphins are being harmed.
First of all, they've got everything they need here to survive. They've got their food, they've got an enclosure where they're protected from other things, they've got friends here. It's the easy life.
But programs like this are so popular and so lucrative, operators charge up to $65 for a 20-minute spin. Friends of dolphins fear the business will get out of hand, that the capture of these sensitive, intelligent mammals, already rough, will only grow worse. Their ranks in the wild will be depleted.
Our first concern is with the wild populations and what kind of damage are we doing or impact are we creating by having hotels, casinos, is it supermarkets next, going into the Gulf of Mexico and removing these animals?
The fear is that dolphins will become aquatic versions of baby chicks at Easter time. Or as one preservationist put it, how do you deny the Dayglow Motel in Des Moines a dolphin permit when you've issued one to a hotel in Hawaii?
I see it as a crime, to be honest with you. I really do. I see a bunch of money-hungry hotel owners, you know, who look at dolphins as commodities.
Just over 1% of the 335 dolphins in U.S. captivity now tows tourists at a handful of sites. Other entrepreneurs would like to cash in, even though the federal government has imposed a temporary moratorium on seizing dolphins for that purpose.
Let's change it around. Let's see who's serious. Let's build bigger facilities. Let's get people in there who have more qualifications.
For now, then, the government is studying these programs to see whether they are good for man or beast. Ultimately, though, what must be decided is when fascination with the dolphin becomes exploitation. Bob Fall, CBS News, Miami.
And that's part of our world tonight. Dan Rather for the CBS Evening News. Susan Spencer will be here tomorrow. Connie Chung on Sunday. I'm going fishing, so Bob Schieffer will be here next week. Good night.
The champion, Frankie Warren. The challenger, Loretto Garza. The battle for the USBA Junior Welterweight title. Plus World Cup skiing tomorrow.
This is CBS.